In this room, around 34-35 hours went since we started recovery stage in order to bring mycelium to the surface of the casing soil. On last video you saw mycelium when we after 10 hours after starting recovery stage, now 35 hours, and you can see that mycelium came to the surface. Here we have air temperature 21 degree, compost temperature 25.5 degree, and we let air to increase to 21 degree because we know that compost don't have supplements, and risks that it will heat up very quickly is low. So it's quite calm. This is why we can allow air go to 21 degree. If it would be supplements here, we would probably keep lower temperatures. Here CO2 levels is very high, still hard to breathe, and climate humid. Computer says it's 99%, but what we see on the surface tells us that probably humidity here is lower, and it feels like it is lower, and we don't really like what we see on the shells because mycelium is not enough fluffy, and we guess that real humidity here is lower. On this video on the screen you can see situation at the same stage from another farm where Yuri grown mushrooms, and this is the much better picture that you wanna achieve on your shelf. This more fluffy mycelium will give you better results. But still, here is it will be okay. It's a normal situation for this farm. Maybe not perfect, but you can see that mycelium is growing and it went to the surface. And now it's time to start cool down. We will switch cool down parameters and we'll go to next stage to create our mushrooms, to create generations. Today we started cool down when we had next parameters. Our compost temperature was 25.5 degree, air temperature was 21 degree, CO2 we saw 8,000, but probably it was much higher than 8,000, and the relative humidity was 98%. Until tomorrow I will keep high CO2 levels. Yeah, I drop them to 4,000 ppm, but still it's quite high humidity level. I will keep relative humidity very high, if possible 98%. I will drop air temperature to 20 degree and go down with air temperature to 20 degree, and I will not lower also humidity because our compost is quite active. I will not go down with air temperature too much because we have quite big delta between compost and air, and if we go down with air too much because of this compost is hot, we will risk to dry out the shelf, the surface of the shelf. In the end of cool down, after 5 days of cool down in this room, I will try to achieve 21 degree in compost, 94% of related humidity, and CO2 close to 2000 ppm. I want to say that it's not dogmatic, it's not 100%, and it's not always what you should do. You should understand what you do and you should find combination of those parameters. For example, 94% can sound quite high humidity in the end of cooldown period, but if you do everything properly and with combination of CO2, temperature and relative humidity, our goal is to create proper amount of pins and create generations of mushrooms. And from this generation, when we have generations, our harvesting will be stretched during 5 days that we need, and each day we will have a good amount of mushrooms, but not in harvest all yield or 80% or 70% of the yield in one day. There is no blueprint of how you should do cool down. What you should achieve, you should watch what you have on your surface, on your bed, and in the end of cool down, you should have proper amount of mycelium. You should achieve a relation between black and white places on a shelf that you want, and you should create generation. So it's experience, and each next room you adjust your parameters to achieve better generation and to get closer to picture that you want to have on your shelf in the end of cool down. You can see mycelium on the surface. I will show it. Yeah. The amount of mycelium that came to the surface. When we started cool down, initially here in the room was very high level of CO2. We don't know it, probably it was more than 10,000 ppm, and now we have 3 o'clock, CO2 level went down to 4,000 ppm. And what is important is to not open fresh air to 100% straight away, because in this situation you can get mushrooms that will be dirty because they started to pin in this short moment when you dropped your CO2 levels from high numbers to 4,000 ppm. Today we want to create only first generations of mushrooms, and we should avoid having a lot of pins today. Our cool down process is switching mycelium from vegetative growth to generative growth, when it starts to feed differently and it starts to grow differently. And for this we create like autumn for our mycelium. We go down with temperatures. It's also we often call this cool down as shock, because the mycelium is like shocked, and this cool down, it's not always only about temperature, and it could be not about temperature. It's a process when we're switching vegetative growth to generative growth. We can do it not with temperature, with CO2 and with humidity, or with combination of those parameters. When we go down with air temperature, we can create pins. When we go down with CO2, we can create pins. And when we increase evaporation by lowering humidity, we also create pins. So you should find combination of those parameters to create number of pins that you need. And you need to create generations which will be mushrooms to be picked in different days. And this is the main target of our cool down period. It's good to have 4 or 5 generations, and this will be time that you do your cool down process. For phase 3, it's good to have 100-110 hours of cool down. During this 100-110 hours, we will drop our temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels. For phase 2, this period will be 10, 15, 20 hours shorter. So it can be 80, 85 hours for phase 2 compost. Our mycelium on the start of cool down still fluffy, and I want to avoid water drops to appear on the surface of mycelium. If I let water to get mycelium and be on the surface of mycelium, I have a risk that I end up with a quite black shelf, which I want to avoid. So now I want to continue this vegetative growth of mycelium and keep it growing. For phase 2, we should make this cool down process shorter, because phase 2 not as active as phase 3 compost. So we have a risk to have very rare flesh, not enough pins. So for phase 2, we do more aggressive cool down than for phase 3. During cool down period, it's important to look for your difference between delta between compost and air temperature. With a big delta, you evaporate more. So you should understand what difference between your air and compost and do cool down according to it. It's easier to control quantity of mycelium on the surface by changing CO2 levels that you have in a room. Yuri suggested that he goes with temperature down slowly, and he set this downward trend in temperature from start, but then he looked to the shelf and see how much mycelium he has on the surface, and according to this he controls CO2 levels, and if he has not enough mycelium on the shelf, if it's too much mycelium on the surface, he will go with CO2 levels faster. When it's not enough mycelium on the surface, he will go with CO2 levels slower. So the higher CO2, the more mycelium we will have on the surface. On this stage, our parameters, first day of cool down, our CO2 will start from 5,000, 4,000 ppm, and after 5 days of cool down, we will come to 1,600 or something like this. Temperatures, air temperatures, now on the first day after recovery period, we had temperature in the room close to compost temperature. It can be 22 or something like this, 21 degree, and we go down with the temperatures depending of activity of the compost to 18 degrees or even to 16 degrees, again depending of your activity of your compost. In this room we used calcium to water the casing, and from this we know that mycelium will grow quite aggressively, and we will have enough mycelium on the surface. As grower, you should watch what you did in previous batches, previous room, and you can adjust your parameters to have proper amount of mycelium on the surface. We know that this room was watered with calcium, and we know that mycelium will grow aggressively. If there were no calcium in this room, we would start cool down only now, like half a day after, because without calcium mycelium won't grow as aggressively. When we have first day of cool down, it's good to have this water drops almost on each straw. here we have some water, but as Yuri says, he would like to see much more water on the ends of those straws to understand that we have a good amount of water in the compost. This compost, according to him, watered a little bit not enough, so we have not enough these drops of water on the sides. For first couple of days of cool down, we try to maintain fun as slow as possible. But we should control our parameters. So as only we can control our parameters, it's enough fun speed, and we set it on a minimum speed that we can control those parameters. On these first days, we still keep our floors wet, and we try to keep humidity as high as possible during this first day of cool down. Now, when we keep floors wet, it's good to keep floors wet and don't use additional humidification with nozzles or with steam. In this situation, we will still have quite humid climate in the room, but in the same time we can avoid getting dew and drop of waters on the surface of mycelium, which will prevent it from growing. So it's good for us to have high humidity, but in the same time avoid water drops on mycelium. We continue to water floors for next 2-3 days, and after this we stop watering floors and make our climate more dry, but in the same time in the end of cool down period we will want dew and small drops of water on the surface of mycelium. On the end of cool down, we would like to see water drops and like dew on the surface of mycelium on surface on our bed.